Good morning. We'll call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. All three commissioners are present. We'll have the flag salute led by Commissioner Stamper. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I move that we approve the minutes of April 25th, 2016.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Are there any additions, deletions, corrections, changes?
Nope.
Call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. Public comment? We have two opportunities for public comment today. One during the meeting on any kind of subject that you would like, and then again at the end when we have the hearing on the kennels, we'll have public comment for that too. So we have sign-up sheets for both. If you have a public comment, and I don't see anyone signed up for the meeting, we also have a sign-up for the kennel hearing. So we have no public comment. The next step will be Employee Milestone Awards. You have that sheet over there? We'll go down and do that. Today we do milestones, and for the 5 years of service, Eric Eisenberg. And William Halstead. It's hard to believe both of you have been here for 5 years. You have to stand here in the middle. All right, sounds good. You can even stand.
Actually, the picture's less than little.
For 10 years, we have Cheryl Millman, Steve Wold, and Julie Campuzano. No, you have to get in there. The only thing we have to comment on, we did not violate any child labor laws when we hired you. Years, we have Sammy Andrus and Lori Fulber. All right. For 25 years, Donna Moeller and Kevin Hansen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
25 years. Let's do one proclamation at a time.
One at a time.
Yeah, just
Okay.
if you move to the first proclamation, and we'll do one at a time. Just one at a time. Or you want to just do the first one? Just move to approve the first one.
We'll do that first, right?
Yep.
I make a motion to approve the proclamation declaring May 1st to 7th, 2016 as National Travel and Tourism Week in Lewis County.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Would you like to read that?
Yes, I would. Proclamation, National Travel and Tourism Week, May 1st through 7th, 2016. Whereas travel has a positive economic impact on the nation and Lewis County, and whereas travel to and within the United States provides significant economic benefits for the nation, our state, and our county, generating more than $2.1 trillion in economic output in 2014, with $927.9 billion spent directly by travelers in the United States and $192.4 million in Lewis County. Whereas travel is among the largest private sector employers in the United States, supporting 15 million jobs in 2014, including 8 million directly in the travel industry and 7 million in other industries. In 2015, 2,330 jobs in Lewis County were a result of the travel industry. Whereas travelers spending directly generated tax revenues of $141.5 billion for federal, state, and local governments, funds used to support essential services and programs. Lewis County 2015 tax revenue totaled $17.6 million, and $4.7 million was local and $12.9 to state. And whereas Lewis County is in the center of it all, situated between Seattle and Portland, between the mountains and the oceans, hundreds of thousands of travelers pass through our county every year. And whereas measuring nearly 100 miles from west to east and just over 30 miles from south to north, the long stretches of Lewis County's landscapes are as vast and varied as the history, industry, and stories of our people. 4 distinct regions of Lewis County carry their own distinct personality, which call for all of us to be discovered, visited, and enjoyed. Whereas Lewis County government is an advocate for promoting tourism throughout our entire county and has developed a tourism promotional website entitled discoverlewiscounty.com in a strategic effort to collaborate with other tourism and economic development drivers to promote our beautiful county. And whereas meetings, events, and incentive travel are core business functions that help companies strengthen business performance, educate employees and customers, as well as reward business accomplishment, which in turn boosts the U.S. economy. In 2014, domestic and international business travelers spent $283 billion. And whereas leisure travel, which accounts for more than 3/4 of all trips taken in the United States, spurs countless benefits to travelers' health and wellness, creativity, cultural awareness, education, happiness, and productivity and relationships. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lewis County Board of County Commissioners do hereby proclaim May 1st through 7th, 2016, as National Travel and Tourism Week in Lewis County, and urge the community leaders throughout our beautiful county to join us in this special observance. And I'm wondering if our Director of Tourism, IT, would like to come up and give us some updates.
Thank you. Steve Wold, Lewis County IT Director. This is National Travel and Tourism Week, and this morning we hit, with discoverlewiscounty.com, 8,000 followers on our Facebook account, so that's pretty exciting. And we're fast approaching our first year since opening that account. So in less than a year, we've now hit 8,000 followers, and some of our reaches, our posts have reached over 100,000 different people, just a single post. So it's pretty exciting to see what's happening. This weekend at the Fox Theater, we are hosting an American Tale in honor of National Tourism Week and our local outreach for spreading the word about discoverlewiscounty.com. So we invite all of you to go support the Fox Theater and check out an American Tale. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Is approved.
I move that we approve the proclamation declaring the month of May as National Drug Court Week in Lewis County.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Could you read that?
8, declaring May 2016 as National Drug Court Month. Whereas statistics published by the National Association of Drug Court Professionals indicate drug courts and other treatment courts have served over 1.4 million individuals, and whereas they are now recognized as the most successful criminal justice intervention in our nation's history, and whereas they save up to $27 for every $1 invested and produce up to $13,000 for every individual they serve, and whereas 75% of the treatment court graduates will never see another pair of handcuffs, and whereas treatment courts significantly improve substance abuse treatment outcomes, substantially reduce substance abuse and crime, and do so at less expense than any other justice strategy. And whereas treatment courts facilitate countywide partnerships, bringing together public safety, public health professionals in the fight substance abuse and criminality. And whereas there are now 2,966 drug courts nationwide, and whereas drug courts and other treatment courts are the cornerstone of criminal justice reform sweeping the nation, and whereas the treatment courts demonstrate that one person rises out of substance abuse and crime, we all rise, and whereas the time has come to put a treatment court within reach of every eligible person in need. Therefore, be it resolved that the Lewis County Board of County Commissioners declare Drug Court Month be established during the month of May 2016. Judge Hunt, I know you're in the audience here somewhere. Thank you, sir. And
Please
along with
come
your
up and
staff,
comment.
come on up and just talk a little bit about it.
My name is Nelson Hunt, the Lewis County Superior Court Judge and also the Adult Drug Court Judge. And those are some pretty amazing statistics on the national level. We mirror or exceed them in a positive way here in Lewis County. I'd like to first thank the Board of County Commissioners for their continuing support. It has been marvelous for years, and I am hoping that support will continue as our job cannot be done without your support, and I am delighted to report to everyone here, as well as anyone who may read about this, that our partnership has continued for a number of years and looks like it will be continuing into the foreseeable future. I'd also like to say that I often get a lot of credit for the work that other people do, and I suppose that's often the case when you're kind of the top of the totem pole, but I'd like to recognize that there are a number of people here from the Sheriff's Office, one of our great partners in Lewis County Drug Court, and I know they may be here for other reasons, but it's good to see them here in support of this as well. Also, I've noted that our deputy prosecutor is here, signifying our cooperation with the other county agency. I didn't look real carefully around, but I would be remiss if I did not salute the Eugenia Center for all of its treatment work, and that's where the real work is done. And they do a tremendous job, open 7 days a week now, and that weekend service has gone a long way to promote sobriety for people who struggle. Having said that, looking at what we've accomplished here in the last year or so, I don't have the actual statistics and they get kind of boring anyhow, but we have established a peer review or a peer mentor support group. We have an active alumni group. We have a nonprofit organization which is involved heavily in the community, not just in fundraising, but also support for drug court. And our most recent project, we have secured a housing source for 4 to 5 males, which has been a real need here just within the past month. That is an exciting program, which are the establishment of our foundation and the work of our drug court staff, Jan Clifford and Jennifer Soper, has accomplished. So I get a lot of the credit, but as you can see from the names that I've just named off here, the credit really goes to the people who are out there doing the work, whether it's Officer Dickey or Ms. Soper or the prosecutor or the defense attorney, whom I haven't mentioned. It is a group effort, and without the cooperation of everybody and the support of the Board of County Commissioners, it wouldn't be possible. So thank you all for your support and for this proclamation. Have any questions?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge.
And Judge, we look forward to this afternoon. We do have a drug court graduations today, and that's one of my most favorite things as a county commissioner, to watch and see the history of individuals who really had no hope until they were involved in drug court and came out sober and productive citizens.
We usually have graduations on Monday, but we've had so many graduations lately that we don't have any on the first Monday, but we've had so many graduations here recently that we don't have any this month. We will be having, I think our next graduation will be next month, and then we'll have several in July if everybody stays on track, and that's often the case by the time they get to phase 3. I'm sorry to turn my back on you. I didn't realize you were asking me a question. So thank you again for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for the proclamation declaring May as National Drug Court, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I will entertain a motion for the notice agenda.
I make a motion to approve 5 items, resolutions number 16-131 through 16-133.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Fife.
Agenda item 3, my name is Tim Fife, I'm the Assistant County Engineer. Agenda item 3, resolution 16-131, is a call for sealed bids for our P.L. McDonald Milepost 8.68 Bridge Scour Project, CRP 2159G. This project would prevent further undermining of the P.L. McDonald Bridge. Sealed bids for this project would be accepted up until 11 o'clock on Tuesday, May 24th, 2016. And open thereafter at 11:30 a.m.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Lee Napier, Director of Community Development, speaking on agenda item number 4, Resolution 16132. The request before the board is to set a hearing date to consider renewing the moratorium upon the establishment of facilities and development involved in the production, processing, and retail sale of marijuana and related products. If the board chooses to set the hearing date would be May 23rd. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim Fife, Assistant County Engineer again. Agenda item number 5. This is to set a hearing for a franchise for the Cowlitz Indian Tribal Housing to construct and operate and maintain a water and sewer system between the airport on Jackson Highway and Spencer. This is they already have a franchise. This would be to re-up it for another 5 years. That hearing would be June 6th, 2016 at 10 o'clock or thereafter.
Thank you very much. Does the board have any questions on the notice agenda? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Notice agenda is approved.
I move that we approve the consent agenda items 6 through 8, resolution number 16-134 through 136.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Suzette?
Good morning, Commissioners. Suzette Smith, Auditor's Office, Financial Services Division, here to present to you agenda item number 6. This is resolution number 16-134, and it is the weekly approval of claims against the various county departments. Last week, we had 230 regular warrants, number 746638 through 746867, for a total of $885,773.39. We had 2 skips in sequence. Those warrants were issued on behalf of the special purpose districts. Those were number 746507 through 746637, and then 746940 through 747016. Those warrants are approved by the special purpose districts commissions. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Carey, Facilities Manager, and I'm here to speak to Resolution 16-135, the declaration of surplus personal property. From time to time, we come forward with a list of property that is surplus to the needs of the county. We try to do this on a quarterly basis. Once these items are declared surplus, we can proceed with disposal. A lot of times these items are transferred to other governmental entities, qualifying nonprofits, and if we can't find another home for them, we sell them at public auction. So if there's no questions.
Does the board have any questions?
And this list will be online for folks to look at?
Yes, yes. So.
Thank you very much, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Tim Fife, Assistant County Engineer. Agenda item number 8, Resolution 16-136. This is a resolution to amend a Rural Arterial Program project agreement for Central Alpha Road Improvement Project. Previously, we signed an agreement to withdraw this project and pay back $152,283.80. We recently submitted a request for a waiver of payback, and the CRAB board approved that waiver for $123,640.22 on April 14th, 2016, and this agreement would finalize that change.
Board have any questions? Then I will call for the vote on the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. The next part of this process will be a hearing on a new chapter amending Ordinance 1266. We're looking at dog kennel operating permit and inspection programs. The first part of this hearing will be a staff report, followed up by a question and answer period. After the question and answer period, we will open it for public testimony, and after that, we will consider the amendment. So starting out with this hearing, Danette, Eric, and Bill.
Bill will perform a presentation, so he's going to do it from the podium.
Good morning, Commissioners, and good morning to all in attendance. My name is Bill Teisel. I'm with Lewis County Public Health. I supervise the division that includes the humane officer, and it's going to be part of this proposal. So, in brief, what I'm going to be showing here is a presentation that I put together. It's a changing presentation as we have changed this proposal as we started. We've taken a lot of public input. We've reached out to the stakeholders on this, and we tried to come up with a program we think that fits our needs and everybody else's needs as well.
How many hearings have you had?
We've had 3, I believe, with the public, just for seeking stakeholder input. So one of the things that I'm going to be showing here is just sort of I have some brief bullets in here that talk about, it sort of breaks down our code a little bit, so it's just layman terms. And then I also have some photographs in here to show you what it is we've been seeing in Lewis County when it comes to dog breeding practices. And it can range anywhere from just a few animals to hundreds of animals. The first thing we did is we changed the definition of kennel to 10 or more dogs over the age of 6 months or 20 dogs total. Requires a kennel operating permit. When considering fees, kennels are separated by commercial and non-commercial. Some example for non-commercial kennels for 10 to 15 dogs. And by the way, this is only for dogs. It is not for cats or any kind of other animal. This only pertains to dogs. I've listed some examples here. One example is a category. It's in Lewis County. Dogs are trained for police work, private parties, dogs with specialty training for protection purposes. These dogs live with the person on their property during the duration of their training. They don't arrive for training until they are approximately 6 to 8 months of age. Most of these dogs are intact. However, the objective of the business is not breeding. Because 10 or more intact dogs over the 6 months old are kept on the property, it is a kennel and falls under the existing dog breeding practices code. The animal authority has inspected the premises and found them to be very compliant. This operation would remain a kennel under the new provisions and would need a permit, but the permit would be at no cost. It would be free. For a non-commercial kennel for 16 to 30 dogs, an example of this category lives in Lewis County. Takes the dogs that are strays or tied to the gate. This example does not spay or neuter the incoming dogs, nor do they adopt the dogs out to new homes. The dogs do breed when they come into contact with each other. This person has admitted to selling the puppies from time to time, but not all of them. And selling is not the purpose for collecting the animals. This person does not advertise her dogs on listing. Many would consider this sort of practice a type of hoarding, and it possesses the same humane treatment and public health concerns as a commercial kennel. Because 10 or more dogs, intact dogs, over the 6 months of age are kept on a property, it is a kennel and falls underneath the existing dog breeding practices. This would require a non-commercial hobby. We have that, it's a sort of a new definition. We have a hobby kennel permitting 16 to 30 dogs, which has a $25 fee. Commercial kennel. An example of this category is within Lewis County and has a large dog breeding operation with approximately 35 to 45 dogs at a time. The sole purpose within this business is to breed and sell puppies. Puppies for sale are advertised and sold and shipped all over the United States. Again, because this is an example of more than 20 dogs, it is a kennel and falls underneath the existing dog breeding practices code. The operation will remain a kennel under the new provisions and we require a commercial kennel for 31 to 45 dogs, which has a $150 fee. Some of the risks, because we are public health, some of the risks that we also look into, I have listed up here. Some of them are zoonotic diseases, and other are just animal-to-animal diseases. I won't go through and list them all, I'll just have them listed up here. Again, we have a higher risk of transmission for zoonotic and animal diseases. We're looking for unsanitary conditions, infestations of fleas and ticks, and failure to seek veterinary treatment when necessary. First photograph here I have was a relatively small operation, but it still shows that even though we have only a few animals, they can be left in some pretty poor conditions. This one here is a little bit larger. This would be more the 16 to 35 animal range. Not really getting rid of animals, pretty much just keeping them in one spot in a location. And this one here, this is an example of over 100 animals in a house or a property, including a house and an outbuilding. So this would be a commercial kennel. And this particular one, can show that basically a kennel can be just about anywhere. This one was inside of a recreational vehicle, and you can see by the following photographs that the conditions were bad. Any questions?
We'll come to the question and answer period. They're still going to finish their report, and then we'll come back to you, sir.
Eric Eisenberg from the Lewis County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I'd like to add to the staff report by talking about what the proposed changes would be. So you got a sense from the PowerPoint presentation as to what members of the public health staff were finding out in the community when they went out and saw some of the worst kennels in our community. And those kennels exist despite the fact that we already had some code on the books that was supposed to address those problems. And the existing law is summarized for you on the white sheet that was available up here. The top bullet point says current law. And basically, in a nutshell, our current code mirrors the state law. In fact, it mirrors it so closely that essentially we just used that and we didn't use the code because it was basically the same. And that means that there were minimum health standards set by the state, and if people kept 10 or more dogs that had not been spayed or neutered, and they were over the age of 6 months old, and if they kept them inside enclosures, like what people call kennels, a dog pen or any other type of enclosure, because people use all kinds of things. If they kept them in any type of enclosure, there were these minimum standards that they were supposed to follow, which didn't always happen, as you could see from pictures of dogs that had feces in their face or that were in these stacked kennels or in really unsanitary conditions. If it were the case that someone did not follow those rules, that was labeled a crime. It was a gross misdemeanor, and that's still true under state law. But the fact of that being a crime had certain consequences for how the county interacted with people who supposedly had kennels that were not up to par. And first among those is that it created this automatic adversarial relationship, right? You were investigating the person for a crime. They were not inclined to want to talk to you or help you because they thought you were out to get them because it was a crime that you were accusing them of. So the major change that's proposed is actually not to those minimum health standards. If you look at the draft ordinance, which was available up here for you, and if anybody didn't get a copy and they need one, I have one copy that I can give out. But the major change is not to those minimum health standards, but to the way that the county would try and interact with people so that they would become aware of what those standards are so that we could try and encourage them to comply with them. And that change is to create an operating permit program in which, in order to have a kennel, you get an operating permit. And to get the permit, you would have to have a once-a-year scheduled inspection in which the county would come in and they would look at your kennel, and any problems with those minimum health standards, they would alert you to those. And you would have the opportunity to fix them. And if you were able to do so, then you can obtain the permit and you can operate your kennel. And in case you were not able to do so, then you would be told, well, you're not going to get your permit, you need to fix this. So there is a way of opening a line of communication that happens much sooner than when you're being accused of committing a crime. And it's kind of like too late for this friendly approach in which we try to encourage people to do better. The operating permit program would be annual, so we would ask people to come back once a year and do this. And that way, if it were the case that someone had a kennel that had kind of gone downhill because of health reasons on their part or anything like that, we have a way to check back in and to remind them about any kind of problems they have. There are some changes that have occurred, and in fact, those changes have evolved over these 3 meetings we've had with members of the public. And so I'd like to draw your attention to the green page that was up here for you. And that is specifically about how public comment has changed the proposal that we are making. I would say the most important effect that the public has had on the proposed change has been in what the definition of kennel should be. So the importance of the definition of kennel is, well, there were really 2 different importances, which for simplicity's sake we've made into one, but I'll tell you both. The first importance was, to whom will these minimum health standards apply? So if you had a kennel and you kept dogs in enclosures, you had to meet these minimum health standards set by the state. We didn't create that rule. That was actually in state law. The second question is, who should have to get a permit, and how will they tell that they need to get one? Both of those things were involved in what the definition of kennel was, and there was a kind of ebb and flow from the public about what they thought was the appropriate way of drawing that line, and that's summarized for you here. So originally, the state law provides 10 or more dogs that are intact, meaning not spayed or neutered, and adult, meaning over 6 months. Many members of the public, including many members of the local Dog Fanciers Association, pointed out that that doesn't exactly jive with the public health concerns that we were seeing out in the community. Sometimes people have fewer than 10 dogs, but have a really nasty facility, and it's cruel to the dogs, and it poses a risk because a dog could have parvo, and they could give the dog out to a member of the public, would take it into their home, and might hurt other animals. So they were concerned that maybe we might want to try and address those facilities. There was also concern from members of the public that some facilities did spay and neuter their dogs, but they weren't necessarily very clean. And in fact, many of the facilities that we were talking about there were people who actually had the best of intentions. They wanted to be animal rescue facilities. They would find strays, they would get them spayed or neutered, and they would keep them because they wanted them not to be out being hurt, they wanted them not to be out being starving. And those facilities, well-intentioned as they might be, they sometimes suffered from the same problems that perhaps a, quote, puppy mill might suffer from. So people were concerned about that possibility. And finally, the state law requires you to decide whether a dog is spayed or neutered or not. And there were many people who were concerned about how we would go about determining that, and whether you're just going to take the person's word for it. Do they have to provide documentation? If they have to provide documentation, that costs money, and how fair is that? So there were lots of concerns in that regard. Here's where the ebb and flow part comes in. The first 2 meetings that we had on this subject with members of the public encouraged us to actually expand the definition of kennel to try and capture more people that might be posing a public health problem. And the response that we had was to do so. We created a 3-part definition of kennel that was the state law definition, which I've already talked about, or A, quote, commercial kennel, if you were breeding dogs for sale, or then you would count as a kennel even if you only had 2 dogs instead of 10. And finally, a third definition, that if you had over 20 dogs, we no longer cared if they were spayed or neutered or adult or whatever. That was just plenty of dogs, and you should perhaps have to have a check to see whether you were complying with the minimum health standards. Well, as you might have imagined, when we went to the third meeting with that proposal, many members of the public there thought that that was really complicated, and it was hard to figure out, if you were just a regular dog owner in the community, whether this would apply to you. And they asked us to simplify the test. So the draft that you're seeing today reflects that compromise, which is a simple standard as to who needs to get the permit and whether the rules will apply to you. The definition of kennel is 10 or more dogs over 6 months old, or 20 dogs total. 10 or more adult dogs, or 20 dogs total. We thought that that was a standard that people could understand easily, and that would help them know where the line was being drawn, for better or for worse. They could see how we had tried to accommodate the different views we got from people on the subject.
Eric?
Yes.
If I may interrupt for just a moment, Lisa just printed out a few more copies of the draft code, and it's behind you on that table if anyone in the audience needs one and didn't receive one.
Sure. And for the record, that's Danette York, the Director of Public Health and Social Services. I'll put those copies up here for anybody who'd like them. All right, and now I'll make it shorter for the rest of them, but that is the most important one. Another thing that people brought up, as you might have heard Bill mention, was the idea of a, quote, hobby kennel. So under the, as you can tell from the new definition of kennel, there's nothing about commercial versus non-commercial. There's nothing to make that confusing or have people try to have to figure out if they are commercial or non-commercial. But we retained that distinction when deciding what fees would be imposed, and people in the business of breeding dogs, we are asking them to pay a slightly higher fee. It's not a lot higher, but it's a little bit higher. And but there's a carve-out for those members of the community that have what are called hobby kennels. As you might imagine, lots of people breed dogs and maybe occasionally sell 1 or 2 because let's say they like to breed show dogs and they are searching for the best show dog, and they occasionally get dogs that are not going to be good show dogs, and they don't want to have 30 dogs, so they will sell those dogs, but they do it once every year or 3, and they don't do it to make money. In fact, they lose a lot of money because this hobby is expensive. Those people will be treated as non-commercial to get the lower fee. But again, an average citizen doesn't really have to worry about that when deciding how to go about structuring their lives, because the standard...
Sorry, that was me, sorry.
Okay. The standard is going to be 10 adult dogs or 20 dogs total. You'd only have to worry about this commercial thing for deciding the fee. And if we mess up and some people seem like hobby kennels, and other people maybe think they're commercial, well then we'll be getting a smaller fee. The citizen will get to keep more money, and it's sort of no harm, no foul. The only thing that will happen from confusion about who counts as commercial is that the county will make less money and the citizens will keep more. So that was, again, our compromise to try to make sure that we account for what people wanted without, while still sort of serving the goal of this regulation. There are a couple more things I think that are mentioned on here. I think I'll leave those to you. You can peruse them at your leisure and we can talk about them. But those are a few of the major things. And I think the number one point that I wish to get across to you is that this has been a long series of public inputs, and not everyone in the public wants the same things. And that this has been an attempt to compromise among the many different goals that different people have expressed. Thank you very much.
I'd like to add, again, Bill Teisel here from Lewis County Public Health, that we knew that when going into this process that any type of proposal was going to affect the breeders in the county that were doing things right. We have many, many good breeding operations in the county. They have pride in their production, and we knew that the things we were going to bring up to propose on this was going to affect them too. So by getting their input through the public process, we hoped that not only were we going to be able to get a proposal out, but a proposal that would actually benefit them in many ways by being a respectable breeder.
Anything more on the staff report?
I don't think so.
Yes, sir. Please come up to the podium and speak so we can get you on record. This is a question and answer period. Anybody has questions about this? If it's a public statement, please wait for the second part of the hearing. Ask your question, sir.
is, that was a nice presentation, Eric. I do have a question about, does the same attitude that you display apply towards somebody has, say, like 75 to 100 dogs, but they have a pristine operation, separate kennels for all the dogs, I think even possibly like an automatic watering system. So something like that is going to be viewed with an attitude that you've displayed already. Is that right? Or does that Department of Agriculture?
So, just to make clear, before we started touching this area of the code at all, there was a background rule, which I didn't think was important to bring up today, that if you had more than 50 dogs that were not spayed or neutered and over the age of 6 months, you had to get what was called a variance. There was a procedure in the code. Although we have proposed to change the definition of kennel, we had never discussed with members of the public this changing that variance at all, and so we did not touch it. We left it as is. So if someone already went through that procedure and was all sort of set with the code, then they would be, yes, treated the same as any other person in terms of what they were permitted to do. And in fact, if you look at the fee schedule that's proposed, it includes the possibility of people having more than 45 dogs, and does a little footnote about that variance procedure which already existed. So yes, those people absolutely could go through the process, get an inspection.
Okay.
I have heard from our humane officer that there are some facilities that have lots of dogs like that, that are wonderful, that are really tight ships, and that she thinks it's easy to inspect them. One thing I'd like you all to know also is that the inspection form will be set and publicly available, so people would know exactly what they would be asked to pass in terms of an inspection in advance if they wanted to.
Thank you. That answered it very well. Thank you.
Ron Averill, Centralia. When Eric got up, I think he answered my question, but I just want to make sure that it is clarified. Eric, it's not unusual for one large bitch to whelp 10 to 12 puppies. And that could be the family dog. By putting your 6 months in there, I think you've taken care of it. But, you know, there are a lot of folks that, you know, they've got a family pet and may whelp 12 puppies. And whether they can get rid of all 12 or not, sometimes this is a challenge depending on the breed. So I just want to make sure that we're not targeting a group that was not intended to be targeted.
Colonel, just if you look at the fee schedule, if you have 15 or fewer dogs, even if you have those 15 and you're non-commercial, there's no fee for that. That's a zero fee. So we're not charging for that.
I'm not so much worried about the fee as capturing someone that wasn't intended. So
that's part of the reason that the line for whether the kennel counts as a kennel is 10 dogs if they're adults, because we were concerned that people would have puppies and then would want to try and give away those puppies before they became 6 months old. But we were also wanted to sort of pick a line that you proposed for today's hearing where that was really just a lot of dogs, and that there were concerns even for well-intentioned people who care about dogs deeply and have no interest in hurting them. That when does it rise to the level where you're just concerned that you need to have a check to see if public health is being served and the animals are being well served. So 20 was what we proposed for that, to try and avoid the one dog having puppies problem. But again, we are hopeful that people would be able to make arrangements to give away those dogs before they would become an issue. Thank you.
Hi, Carol Walsh, Chehalis. I have three questions. One of my questions is you seem to bounce back and forth between 10 and 15. You've mentioned 10 dogs at one point, and then your fee schedule for lack of a better, says 15. So that's, I'd like a clarification there. And then I would like a clarification on non-commercial or hobby, fewer than 15 dogs. So if you have 2 that are intact potential breeders, you would need a permit. And third, you're talking fewer than 15 or 10, whatever your number is. We're talking intact and spayed or neutered? Or are we just talking intact?
Let me get that one.
I'd like those items clarified.
All right. So to clarify, the fee schedule that you're looking at and that anybody could see in the ordinance, those fees only apply if you are required to get the permit in the first place. And the line for who is going to be asked to come get the permit is 10 or more adult dogs or 20 dogs total. So when it says in the fee schedule, people who have fewer than 15 dogs, it's free, that's really those who have more than 10 adult dogs but under 15, because only people with more than 10 adult dogs are within the scope of getting a permit in the first place. Basically, if you have 10 or more dogs that are adults, you have to get the permit, but it will be free for you until you get to 16 dogs, and then it would cost $25. That's where the discrepancy comes in with regard to that. And then in terms of your second question, I think is the same answer, which is when it says non-commercial or hobby hyphen fewer than 15 dogs in the fee schedule, again, that would only apply to those persons who had 10 or more adult dogs and therefore had to get the permit in the first place, because someone who had 6 adult dogs wouldn't have to get the permit and would not have to pay any fee, and the fee schedule doesn't apply to them at all. Your final question was, does this apply only to intact dogs, or what does it matter if dogs are spayed or neutered? So that is a change in this draft that was the product of our most recent meetings, is we have removed any consideration about whether the dogs are spayed or neutered to try to simplify the line that people had and to avoid those issues that were raised about how do you prove whether the dogs are spayed or neutered. So as it currently stands, the proposal is it's as simple as that, 10 or more adult dogs or 20 dogs total. There is no distinction to be drawn for this purpose with regard to spaying or neutering.
Can I request that we get a clarification here in the section that has the fee schedule that says if more than 10 and less than 15?
So it's clear when you look at the fee schedule, it's clear you don't apply or it does apply.
Right, because
Exactly.
right now I look at that and say, oh, I have 2 intact girl dogs and 1 neutered male dog. I have less than 15 dogs. If I was just looking at, I wonder what the fee is, I would look at this and go, I've got to get inspected and get a permit. So I'd like to see that more clearly defined in this spot so as not to be confusing.
May I ask a question of you? Would it be clearer, in your opinion, if it said non-commercial or hobby hyphen 10 to 15 dogs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's a holdover from before we switched to that. If we could make that change, it would be easy.
Are there any other questions? This is a chance to ask. Your opinions come later, but this is an opportunity to ask the questions, and it appears that that's something we're going to go back and make a change on. So this is an opportunity to actually make changes to the proposal. So you have an opportunity to do that. So please take an opportunity to come out and ask questions and affect the outcome. Yes, ma'am.
Lee Salmon, Onalaska. I have a question here on the fee schedule again. Has the base fee and then the variable fee, and then it says reinspection if necessary. So is the base fee what you pay, and then if you have to have a reinspection, it's bumped up? Or, because at one time there was a discussion of a per dog thing.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. So that specific issue is actually addressed on the green sheet as number 5. It's on the back side of that sheet about the sort of ebb and flow of how the fee proposal changed over time in response to public feedback. So yes, as originally proposed by the county way back in the fall, we proposed a per dog fee in the manner of some other counties have just a dog licensing program in which you have to get a license for every dog, and that's why we thought, well, maybe we should have a per dog fee. And many members of the community thought that's a bad idea. It encourages people to hide dogs. The number of the dogs they have might change. And so we changed that to go to a kind of tiered structure like you see now. I'm going to open it up so I can answer your question more specifically. The other thing is that there were some members of the community who asked that the fees be higher because they wanted them to cover the cost of any administration we might have done, meaning inspections and whatnot. And there were other people who wanted the costs to be lower to try and lower the burden on the citizens who would have to participate in this permit program. And, you know, it's a debate that plays out all over the place between people who want government programs to be budget neutral and people who want to reduce the burden on citizens. So we, again, as the 3 meetings went on, came to this sort of compromise approach, which is the initial fee has been lowered. So the fee that a person would have to pay when they first show up in order to get the permit is the base fee that you'd see, and that would include the inspection. If, however, they were to fail the inspection and have to have a re-inspection under the terms of the code, then the re-inspection would cost the fee that you see in the re-inspection column. And that way, only those people who require additional services to make sure they're in compliance end up paying the higher fee. Those people who have a particularly clean slate or clean facility don't end up paying the higher fee. There was concern, again, from the public and also from our commissioners that if you structure it that way, then there's a lot of scrutiny over how the inspection process works, and they were very concerned that people would feel that the county would fail people on purpose so that they could charge the higher fee. And so the fee form itself is going to sort of set forth clearly, and we have, I think, generated it already, so it's available, and it will continue to be available. It sets forth what a failure on what items would constitute a failure, and what items are like only if you were to fail on like lots of things would count. So it's critical and non-critical things. Basically designed to allay any fears that the county was acting in an arbitrary fashion. So that's the setup for how the fees evolved to try again to account for the many conflicting views that we heard from the public, and actually they're all pretty valid concerns. Thank you.
Ma'am, one of the things we wanted to do there is if you're running a good operation, we wanted to keep the fees low. But if we're having problems, we'd have to go out multiple times. Those fees would be higher to cover our cost. The initial inspection is just there to verify and give you a permit.
Okay, so it's just a flat fee. I have another question too. On the, I guess it would be under the operating permit required, under the waiver, section 4 there, it says the owner, operator, or person in control may apply for a waiver exempting it from the permitting required by this chapter. Under that, a kennel inspected and approved by a private breeders organization. Does that mean if we are inspected by a private breeder organization, a permit is not required?
It means it can not be required, but it's not necessarily so. So again, this was another thing. This is on the green sheet. It is number 3 that came about in response to us meeting with members of the public. Specifically, in this case, it was those members of the local Dog Fanciers chapter who informed us that their chapter already had rules for how kennels should be run, and the American Kennel Association also has such rules. And this waiver idea already existed, but we plugged them into it. So basically, if you are a member of the community and you belong to any kind of dog organization that has rules about how you keep your dogs, and they're as strict as ours, that you would be entitled to apply for a waiver so that you wouldn't have to do this. That doesn't necessarily mean that you would get the waiver, because you might imagine that someone might create a dog organization tomorrow and then claim that it was as strict as ours, and it might not be. But what the waiver allows you to do is allows you to alert the county that you have this kind of organization, and then we would be able to decide whether, like, your organization's rules are basically like ours, and so you wouldn't have to get the permit. It's not a guaranteed right that you don't have to comply, but it's a guaranteed ability to ask to have us come out, and sort of analogous to the inspection that other people would go through. We could come out and see, okay, yes, I see, here are your kennels club standards. They look like our standards. How do they enforce those? Okay, it looks like they have a mechanism in place that satisfies us, and then you would be set. If you get such a waiver, it would be good for 3 years, I believe, under the terms of the...
Okay, so the waiver doesn't have to do with the inspection, it has to do with the whole entire permitting process?
Yes.
Okay.
Come on back up, sir.
I just wanted to make one thing fairly clear to you.
Please, just for the record, state your name.
Stephen Ross. And that is AKC, the American Kennel Club, does not have a set of rules regarding conditions of kennels or anything. They have a guideline. And they do have an AKC investigator that will investigate people on an occasional basis for their records and their record keeping. If AKC investigator shows up and sees conditions that are like some of the conditions you showed earlier, definitely he would have something to say about that and may, in fact, suspend your AKC privileges. But they don't really have rules of how to raise your dogs or just only guidelines.
Thank you. And so in response to that comment, I'd like to say we weren't necessarily sure, because we don't know everything there is to know about kennels like you guys do, as to whether any such organizations exist right now. But by providing for a waiver possibility in the code, we thought, be encouraging private individuals to come together and to form such an association that was self-policing, so that it would keep the government out of the business of having to look at their kennels. That was actually we were hoping that perhaps the dog fanciers who wanted to would form an association that did this themselves, so that then there would be no need for any government oversight, because it would be far better to have people's peers who care and know about dog keeping to make those rules than it would be for us, because we have less expertise than they do.
Some individual breed clubs of different breeds may have done that. I'm not sure, but AKC itself only offers guidelines. But good point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Kathy Spears, Centralia. This goes in regards to what we're discussing with Steve. Item 3, it says kennel clubs may inspect their own membership. Some of the people out here seem to be under the thing that if we have a club member go out and inspect it and it's not of our membership, we can't do that as a club. Our club has guidelines for members only. So this is what you guys are saying, but I'm clarifying this for everybody else. Just because you have some dogs and you do not belong to our kennel club, I can't go out and say, oh yeah, you're fine, don't worry about it. So I just want the public to know that that's not an issue we can handle as a dog club.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Please come on up.
Hi, I'm Sally Basil-Shalis. I have a question about your application process. It says here that you have to have a notarized, if you lease your property from somebody else, you have to have a notarized statement from your landlord, and yet you have a binding lease.
Could you point out where you're seeing
6.15.020 under the application process?
Okay, so what you're looking at there, I should have said this earlier, so I'm glad you said this. What you're looking at there is actually part of the existing code's variance process that we have not changed For all of you looking at the draft ordinance, for the new chapter, that's just listed in plain text because all of it is new. But for everything in Title 6 that's shown, 6.15, the new changes will be shown as underlined, and things taken out will be shown as strike-through. And any text that appears as plain text already exists in the current code, and we had made no changes to it. So you can see, as you pointed out, the existing code had this requirement of a notarized document regarding who owned the property if you were trying to get a variance for having more than 50 intact dogs over 6 months old. We had not specifically addressed anything related to that variance procedure with the community, and so we didn't change it. We thought about it. We thought about removing the word intact from that requirement because we had taken the word intact out of the new operating permit program, but we decided that it would be unfair because people didn't have notice that that was even on the table. So what you're bringing up is a perfectly valid point, and we can consider it, but that was already there.
If you lease your property, you have a legal binding lease with your landlord that they have already authorized you having the dogs on the property, correct?
Just quick question. I want to make sure we answer her question. This issue for the notarized, the notary, is only if they're applying for the variation of 50 or more dogs.
Oh, okay.
It does, if you have 45 dogs, it doesn't apply to you.
Okay.
If you have over 50 dogs
Well, just say
and you're
application
applying,
process, you know.
right, and you're applying for the waiver, then you have to say, yes, I've got proof that the owner knows I'm doing this on his property.
Right.
Perfect, thank you, guys.
So I'm sorry about the confusion
It's
there.
okay.
Yeah.
That works, thank you.
Ron Averill, Centralia. I'm sorry, I just had an opportunity to read quickly through this. But Eric, when we get down into 6:15:20 on the page isn't numbered, but we changed all of these must to shall. And I'm getting into, that depends on what the definition of is. Normally, must is more binding than shall. Why have we loosened this up?
So it's interesting that you bring that up. That might be true in sort of common speak, but in modern legal drafting, there's a distinction between may, meaning something that is permissive but not mandatory, and shall, which means that it's mandatory. And the word must has fallen out of favor because it carries with it this feeling that it's something that you ought to do, but maybe you don't have to do. Like it might have some sort of like,
never was in my dad's house.
In any event, shall is meant to be mandatory, so that is not meant to carry any substantive change at all. That's meant to mean must, except for that it removes any kind of moral language and just says it has to happen, it shall happen.
Yes, ma'am, please come up.
Elizabeth Moyer in Chehalis. So I have a question about the kennels that can be exempted for 3 years and have the scheduled inspections. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be a little hypothetical at the moment, but what happens if we sell a dog, 60 days later they break a leg, and the client calls us and says they want us to cover the bill, and we say no, but as a responsible breeder we'll offer to take the dog back, but that upsets them. So they take it upon themselves to post on social media. May not be entirely true, but all it has to do is go viral with everybody's hearts. And your servers crash from the emails and your voicemails are full over the weekend. Are you really going to just schedule an inspection with us the next time that it's available? Or are you actually just going to come out and find out about it because you're having news media and everything else calling you about the picture that they've posted online about this poor puppy with a broken leg that the breeder won't take care of?
Are you suggesting in this scenario that the breeder had obtained a waiver so they didn't have to get a permit?
No, that they got a waiver, they don't have to be inspected, but every 3 years, and those inspections are scheduled, and you call us up and you make sure that it's okay for you to come out at this time because it's a convenient time for both of us. For a breeder that falls under that category.
Right.
Okay.
I guess I'm confused because...
Eric, what she's saying is, what triggers an inspection? can a complaint or a series of complaints trigger an inspection, or do we have the inspection, the permit issued, and then if we get phone calls, we'll put it in that file, and the next time we go out to inspect, we'll address those issues. But we're not going to allow, or are we going to allow, individual complaints to drive this process?
So for purposes of code enforcement, I guess, in general, complaints do drive the process. I mean, that's why, for example, sometimes they go out and check on one place and not another. It's because someone complained about it, and so we respond because we are alerted. And that could happen with regard to coming out to talk with someone about a kennel, but that would be not necessarily the same thing as the inspection that was part of this license. So to get an operating permit, we are asking people, we're requiring people to schedule an inspection and pass the inspection. And if they were to refuse that inspection, they could not get the operating permit. If, on the other hand, they've got a permit, they're all set, they did what they were supposed to do, and then 2 months later someone calls and makes a complaint, we might, it's possible, yeah, we might absolutely call and contact that property owner, inform them of the complaint, ask if they'd let us come out and take a look, talk with them about it, but we would not be able to, nor would we, require that they submit to that inspection because they would have the right to refuse. The once-a-year annual scheduled inspection is just that. It's a once-a-year annual scheduled inspection. But that doesn't prevent us from asking for permission to see if we can just, because we're trying to see whether the complaint is ill-founded or well-founded, and we might approach people about that in the way we do with any other issue. I can tell you that...
Let me ask you that question a different way, following her same line of thought,
right.
Hypothetically. So we have a group that has a permit, they have an operation and a permit, that member sells it to somebody else, that facility goes downhill, we get a complaint. Are we going to go out and re-inspect and require a new permit from the new owner? I guess that would be one of the...
So I think I can answer that. Code compliance, which is the division that the humane officer works under and this code will fall under, is a complaint-based function for the county. We respond to all complaints as much as we can. In animal cruelty cases, if it is a call to 911 and we receive the complaint from them, we will respond. We will go out and do an inspection and investigate the complaint. If someone just contacts our office based on the fact that they know that the breeder has one of our permits, if they are complaining to us about animal cruelty, we inform them they need to contact 911 so that we can get it through the proper channels before we will respond to inspect.
Okay. I think I understand what you're saying, but I'm not quite sure you're getting what the concern that I have. So I'm going to remind you of a case that happened on the East Coast of the woman who stupidly duct taped her dog's mouth shut, took a picture of it, and posted it on Facebook. And if you'll recall, in less than 24 hours, that went viral, and people from all over the nation was calling the sheriff's office and every office phone number that they could get a hold of in order to be able to turn this woman in. Now, I agree, what she did was cruel, stupid, and she earned everything that she got for it. However, what is always posted on Facebook and Twitter and all those other social medias are not exactly accurate.
Right. And we take that into consideration.
Well, yeah, exactly.
We take that into consideration.
When you get inundated by an entire nation of somebody with a heart of gold trying to say this person is abusing this animal, how are you going to deal with that as a licensed kennel?
That's not a licensing issue. That's an animal cruelty issue. So your permit's off to the side, but they're going to respond to that as if shots fired or anything else. They're going to respond to it as a case through 911 and the sheriff's office. That's how that's handled. If you have a permit and you have a sanitary, safe place for your dogs, that's a different issue. Animal cruelty is an individual event that's not covered by this licensing, permitting, inspection process. If we get one of those and the deputy shows up or the animal control or code compliance shows up and you've got a well-run facility, that's the end of that case. They responded, everything looks good, and they're done.
Okay, I got it.
That's correct. Whether we receive one phone call from the sheriff's department or we see hundreds of posts or phone calls directly to us because of a Facebook or Twitter incident, we will respond the same way.
That's a good question to ask, though, is how much of that, that's a good question to ask. How much of this is individual event driven, or is, as the commissioners feel, we need a process to be able to verify that our kennels in Lewis County are safe and humane. That's the goal of the county. Do we have a good program, or do we have dogs in unhealthy, unsanitary conditions that are being abused? Individual events, that triggers a completely different process.
I'll also add that we've been doing this a long time on different types of cases, and we work off factual basis, and most stuff off social media, more than 9 times out of 10, is not entirely factual, so we take that into account.
But that was a good question. Yes, sir, come on up.
Brian Green from Onalaska, Washington. I'm curious, now, if you find that people have been falsely reporting, do you do anything about that? Do you go after the false reporters, or is it just they're allowed to anonymously make complaints against anyone they feel like?
Did you hear what he said right up front? He said if they call individually for an animal abuse case, right, they'll ask them to call 911 so it gets entered into a system so there's actually an official response.
Right, so my question was about the complaining party. There has to be a complaining party, yes, according to the Constitution of the United States of America, so that party has to identify themselves. So if it's going to go to the sheriff's office and all that stuff, and they're going to call, so would it be the sheriff complaining to them, or would it be the complaining party complaining to them that's complaining about this person or whatever? And if it's anonymous, then how does that fall into a due process of law?
Bill, if you get an anonymous phone call on cruelty, what do you do?
We still take the information. Sometimes if they don't want to give their information, we don't require it. It does lack.
Do you still respond to that, though?
Respond. Sometimes it lacks their credibility, but we will still respond to it.
I want to add something to that. So 2 things. Number one, the response that we're talking about might be nothing more than taking the information and storing it so that next time if someone complained again, you would have background that this was something that had come up more than once. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go out and contact the person or search or do anything advanced. The other thing that you mentioned was what do you do if the reporting is mistaken and as opposed
or
to
malicious
or false? Yeah, it's important to note, this is a little off topic, but I think it's worth saying, many people who complain about dog facilities do not necessarily do it in such a way as to make it seem like they are maliciously lying. Rather, they say, I'm not sure what's going on next door, I'm worried about it, here's why I'm worried, and they give several reasons. And it might turn out to be nothing, but it's frequently not the case that they made direct and specific accusations of some sort of wrongdoing. And so when you don't necessarily try and go after those people for having lied because you can't show that they did lie because they just raised concerns. They didn't actually accuse anyone of doing any wrongdoing. That's more common than you'd think, that people call just because they don't know who to call and they don't know what to do. They just have concerns and they want to tell someone. Thank you.
Well, it seems like that's just a way for people to use the system to get back at people that they don't like. And that's what I don't like about things like this, is that I find that that's used more often than not for your neighbor to get back at you because they don't like you, or whatever. And for the county not to investigate that and then just go say, well, someone made a complaint, and then next week someone else made a complaint, or the same person, or how would you know that? You seem more interested in going over and investigating the person being complained against, no matter what the cause. That's what it sounds like to me, versus people making false accusations. Why isn't there some sort of a mechanism to go after people like that? That's a very common thing these days, making false reports and then allowing it to be anonymous, or use a third party like the prosecutor or the sheriff's department to make the charge. I think that's That's not the way to go here. I think that that's what we're treading on very dangerous ground when we start doing things like this. So I'm just so that was my question, and I really didn't feel that it was answered in a way that made me feel comfortable about my rights and my property and my castle, my home. So
Okay, thank you, sir.
thank you.
We have another question, sir?
Black's Law, 4th edition, on definition of permit. It says that the person issuing the permit has to be given that authority. Who's given the authority here to issue a permit? And who gave it to them?
Eric, I'm going to let you answer that one.
All right. So the Constitution of the State of Washington authorizes counties to make what are called police power regulations, which are general health and safety laws.
Who gave them the authority to give somebody the authority to issue a permit?
So I'm trying to answer your question. So well, let's go way back. So states in themselves are sovereign. They have certain authority to issue laws, and that authority is embodied in our state constitution, the Washington State Constitution, which recognizes that counties are permitted to make general police power laws and regulations, which are laws and regulations designed to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of that county. And things like permits...
Excuse me. I don't think so. The Constitution gives the people the power. They're the only ones that have the power to give anybody a permit. Now, I won't give a permit or permission or the authority to anybody in this room to issue me a permit for something that I can do under the Constitution, whether it's one dog or 1,000,000 dogs. I have that right. And I'm not going to give that right up to any government official to get a permit. That's my right.
Do you want me to answer that or not? I don't know if you wanted me to.
You can if you...
All right. So I guess we can... I'm trying to not make this very theoretical and philosophical because we need to get a move on. But what you're talking about, an individual's right, is different than the right of the people with a capital P, all the people. They came together and created a state government, and that government is embodied in the Constitution.
And I have that right until I violate her rights. Her rights start right here in front of me. When we're nose to nose, that's when I violate her rights, or she violates my rights. Until then, your job is to protect my rights and to enforce my rights.
All right. So, sir,
and it's the same for her.
You're absolutely entitled to your beliefs, which are obviously strongly held.
That's the Constitution. And you took an oath.
Yes, and I believe I'm upholding it.
And that is your contract with us.
All right. Thank you, sir.
The same with them. It's their contract with us. I'm David Dunn.
Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question on the inspections. We have a date here of the July 1st. How many kennels do you feel will fall under this inspection process?
Sounds like we're guessing right now about 30.
About 30? Okay.
And it sounds like we don't know how big the problem is. We just know there's been a problem with different lawsuits and violations of what I would call puppy mills, and they've created unhealthy, unsanitary conditions. And when the prosecutor has pushed those all the way through, and they have one of the items the judge has noted was that the individual couldn't run another dog kennel because of the conditions, and in the appeal process, that was a lifetime ban was interpreted to mean 2 years. And so if we're going to have a lifetime ban from puppy mills, and it's only 2 years, and we have to address this every 2 years, we wanted to look at some kind of inspection process. So if there were people who violated this, were out of the business for 2 years, came back in, we would have a mechanism that we could go back and check on them to make sure their new operation was sanitary and safe.
I understand. So my concern is 30 is not as much as I thought that it would fall under there, but you know, between now and the beginning of July is essentially about 42 business days. I, of course, have a concern. I'm very protective about who comes on my property, when they come on my property. I'd really rather not have someone come and inspect my property after they've been down who knows where. So based on that, you know, I would want to schedule like something first thing in the morning so they haven't gone anywhere, done anything, you know, whatever.
You don't want them tracking from a puppy mill with
Correct.
issues into your dog.
That's correct. So I'm
Good
hugely
point.
concerned, one, about just allowing someone, but then to do that, you know, I'd want them, like I said, first thing in the morning, whatever. Seems to me like we may not have enough business days to make it to where I feel comfortable allowing someone to come look at my facility and the you know, the precautions I personally take on with my dogs. You know, I fall under the commercial deal.
I think
So
I can answer that for you.
you know.
Okay, so the July 1 is a proposed starting date. That doesn't mean necessarily we're going to be out of facilities inspecting on July 1. We're going to be operating on a case-by-case basis here as we move along. The reason I say case-by-case is because we obviously have a lot of existing facilities that we've been working on that we're going to be probably starting with first, and they may be treated a little bit different than the person that just basically comes in and says, okay, I'm filing an application, and we start the process from the word go. So I don't want you to think that just because it said July 1 start date, that we're going to be knocking on your door July 2. The humane officer or our office will contact you through the permitting process, and you can schedule together you'll schedule the inspection.
Okay, so the process will be, we come in, we fill out the paperwork, we submit it, and then we're called for an inspection or something, and we arrange
We'll
something.
schedule the inspection with you.
Right, but at this point, it's going to fall after the quote enforcement period.
It will. It's a new program, like a lot of different programs, where we start off and move things on. Now, you know, we're going to be moving heavily on the education portion on this where it fits. So, like I said, this is something new. This is going to be a program where we're going to rely a lot right off the bat with just basically educating people.
Right, and you're obviously looking for voluntary compliance.
Correct.
And that's my issue, is what is the process there? And if I'm in the works or whatever, then I'm not going to have to worry about, you know, July 15th, someone saying, hey, you're not in compliance.
I want to go back on a step. This is not relying on voluntary compliance.
No, I mean,
I know what you're saying, but what we want to do is work with you and start out as education. These are the standards we're looking at. That's going to be an education process. As we run across them, as you can see, the fee schedules, as we run across areas where we find repeat offenders and we need repeat inspections, that process is going to get more expensive.
Right.
But the initial education and startup is not going to be draconian.
Okay, well, and I'm not concerned about the reinspection. I'm concerned about, you know, if you went and changed the speed limit here on this road on August 1st, and I was speeding on August 2nd, I'm going to get a ticket. You know, that's what I'm looking for is you know, there's usually a drop dead date. The July 1st seems to be the drop dead date, so it's not really, you know, I mean, there's a process.
That's a proposed when we're going to start accepting applications.
Okay.
We're not going to go out and hit all 30 of those right away.
Because that's not the way it's put in here. That's why I just wanted clarification.
And that's a proposal, and that's why we're having the hearing.
Okay.
Well, and if I could follow up, again, I'm the Director of Public Health and Social Services, Danette York. I don't think I said that for the record earlier. But, we do have a date that has to start, and that is written in the code, and that's the way it needs to be. But as Bill mentioned, we will be doing this on a case-by-case basis. And we have a professional humane officer who will be going out and doing the inspections. Again, they're scheduled with the individual. It's not a surprise inspection, but she will be able to tell if someone is trying to find a loophole, and we will address it on a case-by-case basis. We will try everything we can, along with any other code compliance investigations, to work with the property owners and individuals involved and try to get voluntary compliance. She will know if you're working towards getting something right.
Okay, great.
And if not, then we will address that as it goes along.
Okay.
Our goal is not to try to regulate the kennels. Our goal here is to clean up puppy mills. And we have to have the authority to be able to come on the property and issue a permit to get to that process.
Okay.
Bill, there's a lady behind Glenn who's been trying to talk.
Okay.
Okay.
Come on up again.
Elizabeth Moyer in Chehalis. So why did you decide to go this route instead of fixing the loophole of the 2 years being a lifetime ban?
Because I don't have any control over Superior Court judges. There's none left in the room, is there? No, they're all gone. I don't have control over what judges and appeal court judges say.
Okay. Is there anything that is going to be done to fix that loophole in addition to this? Because that seems to be where it's going to be a bigger help.
I would hope that you would write your state legislatures and say, this is unacceptable, we need to fix this. Because I can only cast my net so far. And our goal here is to come up with a way to verify that our kennels are meeting minimum standards.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions? Then I will close the question and answer period and open up the comment period. Would the three of you like your comments be included in the record? Danette, Bill, and Eric.
I would.
Yes,
thank you.
Do the commissioners have a comment?
No.
So the first one I have on the sign-up sheet is Carol Walsh for a comment.
I'm Carol Walsh. I want to say that I am all for getting rid of puppy mills. I am all for supporting anything that prevents animal cruelty. Some of the stories we're seeing now are horrendous, both on individual animal basis and puppy mill bases. That being said, I also think we have a lot of government. I hate to see more government. I do appreciate you working towards those of us who are small breeders. I appreciate the carve-out on the hobby kennels. With those clarifications I asked about earlier, I can live with this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ann Quigley? Okay. And just so we can pick up the recording, kind of pull the mic just a little down.
Hi, I'm Ann Quigley and president of the local dog club and been involved in dogs since 1973. I just want to say, I don't think that the one thing I don't like, I think you should keep in 10 or more intact animals. And those people, I don't think you should be afraid of asking for paperwork. Because if AKC paid me a visit tomorrow, I would have to provide that documentation. And I think that what you folks must realize is that those of us who have bred, shown our dogs, we have a lot of dogs. I was saying today I have 5 of my 15 that are under 4 years old. The rest of them are 8 or older. And so I don't think you should be afraid of mirroring the state code, if that's what you call it, law. Keep it 10 or more intact animals. A good breeder, a good pet owner, a good rescue organization should have that documentation readily available along with the microchip in their animal. So that's my opinion. I know you have to do something. I think the good people will comply. I don't think this will prevent, as in King County, people having hundreds of dogs in their attics to hide them. So that's my, and the Kennel Club is more than willing to work with the county to keep the good people going and to help you out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Ann.
Sandy Gibbs. She left. Jane Reed.
I'm Jane Reed from Napa Vine area. My husband and I have lived in the county here since 1989. We've been dog breeders. I've been in registered dogs for 50 years. You didn't think I was that old, did you?
No, we did, no.
I have much respect for the people that worked on this program. When we came in here in 1989, I have to say one of the reasons why we picked this area is because it was so centrally located for showing dogs and exhibiting dogs. And you were known as wide open. You didn't have the inspections. At that time, more kennels and more kennels were moving into this area from counties that had some very strict rules. Some of the rulings looked like War and Peace, and Vancouver area was one of them. But as soon as we got our property and moved in, my next door neighbors, we discovered were into drugs, and they had dogs. And their dogs ran at large. They killed some cattle. They were tied, when they were tied up, were tied to trees. The female was bred and the puppies died in the rain. So we got right next door to, we were able to see what happens when counties are wide open and you have no teeth to do anything. It's hard to police, I know, all the situations that arise with breeding and keeping animals of any kind, and you guys have got to see the worst of the worst. I do have some concern, as the gentleman did, with people that use you folks and our police force as a way to harass their neighbors. I saw that firsthand too. We had some Pomeranian breeders in Portland who were terribly harassed by a neighbor who called animal control almost on a daily basis and described horrendous conditions. They were inspected. Every few days, somebody came to their property. I don't believe there's much that you can do about it. I really feel that that ends up being between individuals and ends up being a court case of harassment. So I understand where he's come from, and I had this concern, I think I mentioned to you once before. But in thinking about it, when you get those calls, you're going to have to take a look at it, and I don't think that there's much you can do about it. I'm really for the steps that you have taken here. I think it's a good direction. I like the fact that you're stressing the educational end of it, because people do become unaware or uneducated in really on how to take care of animals. So I thank you for your efforts, and I thank you for allowing me the comments.
Thank you, Jane. Stephen Ross.
My name is Stephen Ross, and we raise dogs. We've raised dogs for probably 45 years, and I'm one of the people that has at least 20 dogs. I want to compliment Eric and Bill and the staff for doing such a fine job, and I think that one of the important things that the breeders and the people in this room need to realize that the most important thing about this is the attitude and direction that the officials are going towards. 25 years ago, it was completely different. And there were some people that made some closet-type regulations that we didn't go for. And but that isn't the case now. And furthermore, the only thing I have exception to is maybe Eric putting in a clause where if someone doesn't comply, because some of these real puppy millers may not comply or may hide dogs, is to have a way to get past that. But at this particular point, the only way the animal control officer or the humane or the health department can go onto a piece of property is to get a court order. And this, of course, will eliminate that. And so I want to compliment everybody on doing such a fine job. And I, like you, I live in Winlock or on Jackson Highway. And there's some places that have been real close to me where we know the parvo existed, these type of things that are airborne, carried on your feet. And you don't want somebody that is looking to buy a pet that goes to one of these places and then comes to your place. So anyway, thank you very much. I think you guys did a great job. And except for that little thing, because the people that are going to have 100 to 200, 300 dogs are not going to be raising dogs like we do. Everybody in this room that raises dogs, they know how to take care of their animals. And by the way, you're welcome to come on my property anytime without even an invitation or without an appointment. So thank you very much. I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Kathy Spears.
Kathy Spears, Centralia. I do appreciate all your efforts. I was on the committee with Steve 25 years ago when we had this issue come up years ago. I've been showing and breeding dogs for approximately 35 years.
What breed?
What breeds?
Yes, I'm curious.
At this present time, I have Dobermans, or excuse me, no longer have Dobermans. I have Boxers, Shellowy Squintleys, and American Hairless Terriers. A lot of naked dogs. Hey, no hair in my house. Anyway, as I was saying, I appreciate the efforts. I feel that the people here have done a greater job than last time of coming to us as individuals and as a dog club to get us more involved. We see problems all the time from people that are hoarders, people that are puppy mills, and people that just have some dogs. You know, I'm like Ann, I have several dogs that I keep intact for breeding or showing purposes, because showing purposes, I have to keep them intact. Some of them will never be bred, ever, but they are being shown. And then I have older dogs that are spayed and neutered, and I'm not going to place them. I've had them 4 or 5 years. They're my dogs. They're going to stay on the property. So I agree. I think the word intact should be kept in there for that reason. Other than that, I'm very happy with the changes that are being proposed. And I think we all work together very well, and all of us, the public and the county, should be commended for coming together and doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Bozart.
Good morning. Bob Bozarth, I reside at 247-06 Woodard Road in Chehalis. And I have great empathy for our servants that deal with the situation that involve mistreatment of animals. I am sure they deal with cases that are heartbreaking and gut-wrenching. I will be the first to say that anyone convicted of mistreating animals should be prosecuted and punished in accordance with the law. In regards to Ordinance 1266, I have some concerns and I have some objections. I am not aware of any increase in threats to public health related to diseases from animals being passed on to humans or others in recent years. I cannot find any evidence of this in the 16-page document or 16-page chapter 5.25 titled Dog Kennels. I have spoken to two well-known dog breeders in Lewis County, and I'm happy to see they attended today because during our conversation, they were fearful to come and testify. And they showed up, and I'm glad they did. I'm not trying to imply that anybody from Lewis County Code Enforcement would use such tactics. However, I can share their concerns, as we only need to look as far north as Thurston County to see that there's only one commissioner up there that is holding back on the reins to a completely out-of-control county government. The main concern that they shared with me was of losing their rights of privacy pertaining to the language in the ordinance. I'd like to read a line. It's about the sixth whereas down, and it states, "Such facilities are currently subject to inspection only by consent of kennel owners. But owners who are told they are violating the state humane treatment laws are loath to permit any inspection, such that the law does not reach those that are that they most should reach." I take objection to this. The language of this ordinance not only allows warrantless searches, it forces people to pay to obtain them. Anywhere from $50 to $400 depending on how many dogs they choose to raise. So let me see if I have this right. The government charges you to buy a business license, forces you to collect sales tax, and become a bookkeeper for the state. And now is going to steal your rights only to sell them back to you as to prevent a SWAT team from coming in with guns blazing because you choose to exercise your constitutional rights. Now, if you buy a permission slip to raise and sell dogs, they might notify you before they conduct a warrantless search. U.S. Justice Louis Brandeis described the Fourth Amendment as the right to be left alone. And Article 1, Section 7 of our Washington State Constitution goes even further to protect our privacy rights. It addresses that there must be probable cause and supported by oath and affirmation. It particularly describes the places, searches, and people or things to be seized. So I'll leave you with this. Today, you can choose to grant a waiver to our Constitution by passing this ordinance. Or you can walk out of this hearing room today with your head held high, knowing that you upheld your oath in defending our Constitution.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Everybody can state their opinion. Thank you, Mr. Bozart.
You're welcome, sir.
Elizabeth Moore.
Elizabeth Moyer in Chehalis. I appreciate the county doing what they can to protect the animals, and I recognize that. But I also recognize that what a lot of people are seeing in those pictures is a mental illness. And I would like to see the county help those people more so, and rather than just teaching them how to take care of the animals, help them elsewhere. Because in order to get to those conditions, there's another problem going on. And you can't legislate morality. You can try, but it's not going to happen. I would also like to have them look at more of the harassment side. Because as a victim of harassment from my neighbors, I can tell you it's a very real thing. And it was over animals. So it's there, it happens, and it happened in this county. Thank you.
Matt, would you like to say anything? Or do you want to reschedule?
We'll reschedule.
Okay, thank you, sir. Jimmy O'Hager? We have... You can still go. There's just a list. So if you have to go somewhere and he doesn't mind if you take his spot, okay. I will add you to the list. Yes, sir.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jimmy O'Hagan. I'd like to thank the team for putting on a very good presentation. It was a very good presentation. I'm here because I support smaller government instead of larger government. Concerns me that government's out of control. I'm concerned about the 10 or 15, the family pet owner that has puppies, and 10 or 15 puppies, maybe a couple of puppies might get killed or something to try to keep under this permit. That saddens me. But there's other things I think that are going on here. I'm concerned about the family puppies that are giving away puppies and the puppy business that's colliding here. And I'm concerned that the permit is going to create a situation that's going to create more money for the puppy business. And that's sad to me because that's government getting involved in commerce and interfering with commerce. And I'd like to point out these codes. They're in the criminal code, RCW 9A68030, receiving or granting unlawful compensation. RCW 9A68040, trading in public office. RCW 9A68050, trading in special influence. And RCW 9A68020, requesting unlawful compensation. These are all criminal codes that were established for our government officials to refrain from doing the kind of thing that I think that's going on here today. I think special interest is asking for special consideration. And the reason I say this is because we have commented that there's RCWs in place that are meant to control this thing. They've been passed by our legislature, and there is a means of taking care of the problem. And whether or not the complaints are properly investigated, or the complaints, maybe there's too many complaints made maliciously, but whether or not those complaints are properly investigated, I think that there's a mechanism in place for everything that's trying to be done here that excludes the permit process, and I'm concerned because of the economics involved in it. One, we're at a situation where we have so much debt, national debt, it makes it difficult for private enterprise. And what we do is we don't want to create more debt. My heart goes out for the person that is in economic hardship and they're economically vulnerable. See, and these are the people that I think the Constitution was, the Constitution was to protect everybody, but it was not meant to overlook the persons that are economically vulnerable and with economic hardship. And I'm afraid that you're passing permits that are going to have the greatest effect on the people that are suffering economic hardship and are economically vulnerable, and they're going to grant special consideration and privileges and immunities to the people that are not suffering those economic hardships. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
David Danham.
His name David, what was the last name?
That's Dunham. Dunham. Anyway, I've heard we've expanded our program so that we can engage more people. So you have a larger economic-based pull from by giving them or demanding permits from them, or doing 2 or 3 investigations on them or anything like that. The county officials, at least the sheriff's department, they're 24 hours. I was in the military, I had the same. Whether I worked 24 hours or I worked 2, I got paid the same. So when these guys do an inspection and they come back 3 or 4 times, they're still getting paid for it. It's not extra work for them. They're still getting paid for it. And what the gentleman back here was talking about is I've seen 3 instances where the officer made the report, but there was the complaining party was just mentioned vaguely with no names. And when somebody else made a complaint, there was no response to their complaints. Now, that's favoritism. And that's why I was talking earlier about rights, my rights and these people's rights. We all have those rights. We all have a right to be heard.
And we respect that right. That's why we have these hearings.
Yes.
Right. So that's what I had to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Don Wells.
My name is Don Wells, and I may be a little bit slow. I'm just coming out from under heart, and sometimes I have a short-term memory. But I've been sent here today to report. I belong to a long-standing Native American group.
What group?
What group?
You said a long-standing, I couldn't hear what you said. If you could speak into the mic, it'll help.
That Native American.
A long-term standing group. It's the Native American Brotherhood. You may recognize that as being the forerunner of Martin Luther King. Every Native American in Alaska, Canada, was colored until we changed it. We're seeing the same thing here. Anyhow, I'm sent here today, or asked to be here today, to film this. And the reason that I'm here is we've had some problems, and a lot of it deals with one of your county employees. And I got a declaration on a potential dangerous animal. And what is interesting in it is they haven't used all the sheriff's reports. And what's happening is we filmed the 3 conspirators right over there. Anyhow, we had a false report given, and it was reported in, and actually they're in violation of RCW 4220.040. And this is a county employee here. You recognize her as Alicia Hornberg. Alicia Hornberg was recommended and hired by, I think, in 2009. And she was hired because she was a Olympic.
Sir, I'd like you to focus back on the reason for this hearing, which is
Well, I am.
ordinance.
I am.
Okay, I'd just like you to focus in on that.
Well, I am focusing in on it. But she was recommended to you guys because she belonged to the Olympic Pony Club. She was also trained in animal rights stuff directly out of Peter and Paws. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the next thing we have here is we have, Dave Dunham touched on this a little bit, but since the beginning of this nation, we've had animal rights, but animals are personal property. That's the reason we've had all kinds of laws on that. That's well established. And what we're doing here, we're violating our constitutional rights on that. But anyhow, what I was here to do too is on this we had here, there seems to be touching, and we've today of a Washington State Criminal Code. It's called Assembly of Sabotage.
What was that called again?
Do you recognize that? Assembly of Sabotage? You need to look that up. RCW 9.05030. And it's also followed by criminal sabotage. That's what I'm here to document. 9.05.060. It also goes into culpability with intent. The intent is to hurt and damage people. That's culpability. RCW 9A.08010. And all this comes down to criminal conspiracy. This is written right in the criminal code. This is the code that you are trying to enforce. There's our 3 conspirators. We have that on.
Sir, we normally let people speak for 5 minutes on a comment, and you've exceeded 6 minutes now, so I'll ask you to wrap your comments up.
Okay. I guess that's probably about it. But let me get my paperwork out here.
And if you have anything written on paperwork that you would like to be submitted for the record, we can do that too.
There's a declaration of potential dangerous animal anyhow, it was done by a group of people that are on drugs, my next door neighbors. They brought in dogs. They've killed tamarack sanctuary cattle. This is a Native American entity. This is discrimination. You understand that? And probably the other thing, they also brought in a Rottweiler, a German Shepherd cross that attacked me at the mailbox. There was 3 of them in a pack. They first hamstrung a shorthorn cow having a calf. They hamstrung her, killed her, and ate up the calf. And this is the very declaration that this lady's writing on.
Okay, if you could wrap it up or give us a copy of that declaration, thank you very much for your comment.
It's right there in the public. The sheriff served it on me, by the way. They served it on the Tamarack group. Let's see.
Could you get us a copy of that and then wrap up your comments? Or do we already have a copy of that?
But I also want to tell you guys, each one of you has sworn an oath of office, an absolute contract with we the people. And if you're going to support stuff like this, then be ready for the economic fallout of it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. I guess I got my point across.
You got your point across, sir, and if you have anything in there you would want officially entered into the record,
Well, you can
get
go
a
right to
copy.
the public records, it's right there. Lisa Hornberg can furnish it for you. She'll
Thank you,
have
sir.
a lot of explaining to do. I'm sure of that.
The next one is Rod, and I can't read the printing for the last name. It looks like an Akutz or a Ritz. From Centralia. Is that Ron Averill? Did you have your glasses on when you wrote this? It's not just.
I'm Ron Averill. I'm from 2523 Graff Road, Centralia, former county commissioner. When I first came to Lewis County in 1991, after 30 years in the Army, one of the first issues and one of the things that got me involved in politics was animal concerns that we had. And we had a number of things going on at that time where there was concern among a large group of people that in a rural county we were trying to over-control the rights of people to raise animals. That's what you do in a rural county. You raise animals, you raise food. It's one of the reasons why I first asked Eric the question is, my real concern is whenever we regulate, that we don't go after the individual family that's got a litter of pups, or to the farmer that has to raise a lot of cats because the coyotes are going to eat them. But on the other hand, we've had tremendous problems. And Bob, I hate to tell you this, but at about 2011, we had a serious problem with the puppy mill in this county with diseased animals, of which we had to exterminate about 70 animals with a very contagious disease that impacted families. And it was that caused us at that time to come up with new regulations in the county because we had none. And both Thurston County and Cowlitz County had just passed very stringent regulations. And what happened? The puppy mills crossed the border and came into Lewis County. So our first regulation, which Eric is correct, basically followed the state rules so that we could try to do something about the puppy mills. Now, these aren't the breeders of the AKC standards. These are the breeders of the design doggers, the cockapoodles. And we had operations in here 50 to 200 dogs. And when we went after them, they moved. Not out of the county, they just moved. And unfortunately, we got one guy out there that's doing code enforcement with an assistant, and sometimes the sheriff's department. This is a huge county. We're the 6th largest county in the state. There's no way that we can properly control puppy mills. But we have to start somewhere. Now, I would tell you that when you say this is not in the purview of the county, you have to understand that this is not a democracy. We do not have town meetings with the general population deciding what's law and what's not law and what's ordinance, what's not ordinance, what we can and what we cannot do. This is a representative republic, and the people that we elect to office represent us. Yes, it is government of, for, and by the people, by representative government. And we have, by Constitution, both federal and state, the right for our representatives to make laws to protect the public health and safety of the population. Having looked at this, my other concern is that we have really legitimate businesses. There's a concern made by one gentleman who's concerned about the fact that we're going to impact the businesses that are in the county. Legitimate businesses we don't want to impact. Finding the balance is a trick. And I think that going out and having 3 hearings and trying to get a balance between those folks that are legitimately in the business and these puppy mills that are a threat to our public health and safety has been found here, and I recommend that you pass this ordinance.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You've been very patient.
Yes, thank you for your patience.
I just want to get your name for the record.
It's Sarah Gaffney.
How do you spell the last name?
Gaffney.
Thank you.
And I just came today because I am a breeder. I love my dogs. I've spent time, effort. I do testing.
What kind of dog?
I raise labs. I bought a 32-acre place with 5 ponds for my dogs. So I'm not, I mean, the slides are horrendous. I wish you guys had some slides of nice breeders, of those of us who do really work hard, because people see those puppy mills, and when we're at Costco or wherever we buy our dog food, buying 20 bags of dog food, people are like, ew, you know, gross, you must have a lot of dogs. Yeah, I have a lot of dogs. I get up at 4 in the morning, I go to bed at midnight. I also have a full-time job outside of that, and I have my dogs on my phone that I can look at if they have babies so I can make sure everything's okay. Some days I go home for lunch. I mean, the time and effort and the love I put into making good dogs for shows or hunting or families to adopt, it's huge. I had a neighbor that didn't like the fact that I left my dogs in my indoor-outdoor kennels while I went to work, although hers was in a house in a crate, I believe, or whatever, not my problem. And she did call constantly, and I had the police at my door because she'd call because they were barking. I mean, dogs bark. Bark collars make sores on their necks. I did put them on when I had to because that's what the police recommended, and I moved because I wasn't going to deal with that. But she did not call because my animals weren't taken care of. She sent me a very explicit email that she was not going to stop until she shut me down because she was anti-breeder. So those harassments that we get, I pay sales tax on my puppies. I file with the IRS with my dogs. I have a business license, and now I'm about to probably have a kennel license because I do comply by the rules. But I also want the protection of those people that are harassing me. It's not okay, you know, and like several comments have been made, I mean, we have a lot of people passing judgment on us all the time. Kids live in dirty houses, and they don't even have as many CPS workers at the houses as because of these puppy mills, you know, we're under the scrutiny, if that makes any sense. I don't know a lot about the codes and the politics and all that. A lot of that I didn't get because that's not my thing. I just love dogs. So I guess I ask you guys a couple of things, is just to think about maybe including in your slideshow, because people that are in these meetings that are anti-PETA people, or I'm not saying there are, but if they are, you know, animal activists, like the neighbor who wants to say that I don't take care of my dogs. They're in 10 by 20 kennels when I'm at work. I can't let them run. They could get out and get hit by a car. You know, I'm not going to do that. That's irresponsible. I don't want to be harassed by those people. I'm following the rules. I ask for support in that. I don't know that your rules are going to stop those puppy mills because they don't pay taxes on their dog sales. They don't file taxes with the IRS. You know, they're out there being sneaky like everybody else that owns a firearm illegally or whatever else, you know, that people who break laws break laws. I wish there was a way, and I hope that there is a way to fix that. I just am afraid that they're still going to keep doing, you know, look in the paper. There's so many dogs in the paper, on Craigslist, on all these places where people sell dogs. Call those numbers, go find them, because they're not paying taxes. They're not doing all the things that we do. They're not taking their dogs to the vet. I invited the Humane Society to come out after my neighbor accused me of not taking care of my dogs, and she was a wonderful lady. She came out, she gave me great compliments on my, I mean, you know, that was, to me, it was like you might as well have said I don't take care of my kids, because I have great pride in how I take care of my dogs. So I guess I'm not disagreeing with anything you're doing. I just really want you guys to look at both sides of the story and maybe share that, so maybe we have a few more educated people in the public not thinking every time we buy 20 bags of dog food we're a puppy mill. We're not all puppy mills. So anyway, I could go on and on, but that's just really what I wanted to say is thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments, any other statements?
Just one thing that sort of disturbs me. When that gentleman right over there was speaking about this being a Republican democracy or Republican form. Representative democracy. Well, the problem is that we live in a republic. And in a republic, we have inalienable rights. And to go ahead and stomp on those because somehow you think that we've elected you to do so goes against what you have sworn to do. You're supposed to uphold and maintain individual rights. And so I don't see that anywhere with this. As a matter of fact, I see exactly the opposite of that. And I see all these people, I was talking about democracy, when we don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic where we have inalienable rights that you are not supposed to go against. So I would just like to see you stick with that. Thank you.
Sir. Are there any other comments? Are there any other comments? Then I will close this hearing and considering adopting ordinance 1266. But before we do that, are there any other statements from the board?
Well, we certainly have taken a lot of time, and we appreciate everyone out there who has testified. There were several things that were brought up, and I don't know if we need to clarify. I heard something about 15 or 20 dogs. Is there something in there that we need to clarify? Or are we feeling?
Now let me ask a question, because I saw Eric writing things down. Are there any substantive changes that came up today that we may have to modify this ordinance?
Well, there is a change that is not a substantive change that came up very early about clarifying something in the proposed fee schedule.
With the 10 or 20 dogs?
So 10 to 15 dogs. Instead of it saying fewer than 15 dogs, it could be changed to say 10 to 15. If you'd like me to propose a motion now that could be offered to do that, I can do that. Or if you would prefer to table the proposal until another hearing date so that we can make that change in a more formal way, we could do that too.
Is that the only one that you would have considered that for?
Well, there were two different people who'd been at all of the prior meetings, so they knew the full scope of the project, that requested that we consider reinstating the requirement that dogs be intact for them to count towards the total number of dogs, which is a policy question for this body to decide. And so if your honors would care to consider that in greater detail, again, that might be a reason to wait on this, on passing the ordinance.
Just go back, make proposed changes.
Right. I see. Okay. So let me clarify then. So the proposal, it sounded like, was, as I had stated, the definition of kennel that applies in this thing that is before you is 10 or more dogs over the age of 6 months or 20 dogs total. The proposal from those folks who are part of the Kennel Club was that it should say 10 or more intact dogs over the age of 6 months, comma, or 20 or more dogs total. And so, again, if you would like, I can absolutely improvise a motion to amend what is in front of you, which the commissioners could entertain, and you could do that today if you wish to, or if you wanted to study the issue longer, you could table it. Which would you prefer?
Edna?
Well, I think Gary has an
Yeah, I would, personally, I would like to be able to sort this out and just get the modifications made before we move on.
Right.
That would be my wish.
So then the motion I'll propose, which of course would have to be made by one of you and not me, but the motion would be, in the proposed ordinance, on page, it'll be in section 6.15.010 in the definition of kennel, which is subsection 10. So the motion would be to amend that provision so that it reads, at which 10 or more intact dogs over the age of 6 months, and intact would be inserted before dogs. That would be the only change. Strike that, please. It would be at which 10 or more dogs over the age of 6 months with intact sex organs. That would be the change you need. The phrase intact sex organs is defined in subsection 8 because it's still relevant to something that we didn't change. And so that would be a defined term about spaying and neutering. So to make sure that it's clear, the motion would be to insert the phrase with intact sex organs after the phrase over the age of 6 months in the first line of subsection 10 of that provision, which is 6.15.010. The second motion to clarify the fee schedule would be that for both the line reading commercial hyphen fewer than 15 dogs and non-commercial or hobby hyphen fewer than 15 dogs, that they would read as follows: commercial hyphen 10 to 15 dogs and non-commercial or hobby hyphen 10 to 15 dogs. Again, that would not be a substantive change because if you take the ordinance as a whole, that's what it already means, but that would make it clearer that that's what that means. So if you're, I leave it to you as to how you would get such a motion before the body.
Well, if we're asking for a clean copy, and I'm trying to follow what you're saying, and I'm not so sure. We don't have page numbers on
We're not lawyers.
Even a lawyer couldn't follow it out.
What I hear Eric saying is this ordinance is relatively intact after the hearing, and that we had two changes that we would actually have to recognize before we approve that. So we could have a commissioner propose to make those two changes to this ordinance and then consider the ordinance. We could consider the ordinance as it is without those changes, or we could go back and discuss this and then schedule another hearing.
Okay.
Without comments from you two, I like the option where we make those two changes and then consider that ordinance today. So we'd need two proposals.
Okay. So Eric, I may be a slow commissioner on this today, so could you say what exactly, and maybe Carrie can, because I really am.
You mean print it and put it up on the screen?
Yes, yes. Say where we are.
And he's working on that now.
Okay.
All right, so let me...
Can you change it on the screen so we can see it?
Oh,
I don't get this other.
Do we have access to that?
So we actually have the wording up and
Yes.
displayed?
Yes, so everybody can see. If I can see it in context. Otherwise, I'm.
I appreciate your all's patience for coming here today and sitting through this. Yes, it is. Yes. And because we hold the hearing, and then we consider whether or not to pass the ordinance. And if you look, the first change, it says 10 or more dogs with intact sex organs. And change this from 10 to 15 and 10 to 15. That's the only two changes we're considering based on the hearing.
And he's going to bring it up for us so we can see it firsthand. Okay.
Okay, to speak into a microphone so that we're on the record.
Thank you.
Displaying before you is part 1 of 2 of the motion. So there's a motion that I'm proposing that one of you make. I can't make it, but Robert's Rules of Order, which apply at these meetings, allow one of the commissioners to propose that what is being offered before you be amended and then be considered as amended. So what I recommend that one of you do is move that the provision that's being displayed here, which is subsection 10 defining kennel, be amended to include the red wording that is there before you, to insert the word with intact sex organs after the first clause, which would then, as a matter of practical effect, mean that for purposes of counting towards that 10-dog limit, only dogs that were not spayed or neutered would count. That was proposed by a member of the public today. Could you please scroll down now to the second to last page of the document?
Okay.
Part 2 of the motion is that one of you move to amend the proposed fee schedule as is displayed here, deleting the words fewer than in 2 sections and instead inserting a 10-15. This is not a substantive change, but it's designed to make clear that only those people who have greater than 10 dogs are subject to this fee schedule. In fact, I do propose that you have it amended just slightly differently than I have here. We should make that dash a longer dash, like you see for the other numbered tiers. I'll make that change now.
A dash instead of a hyphen. It's a dash he's putting in. Hyphen small. Mr. Chair, I move in subsection 10 to insert with intact sex organs. And on the fee schedule for commercial, we are taking out fewer than and inserting 10 with a dash. And under non-commercial or hobby, once again, taking out fewer than and inserting 10 dash.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor to approve those two amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Amendments approved. Now I would propose or entertain a motion to approve Ordinance 1266 as amended, to add a new chapter to 5.5 to the county code.
Second?
I didn't do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I make a motion to approve Ordinance 1266 to add a new chapter to 5.25 to the county code, establishing a dog kennel permit program.
As amended.
As amended, I'm sorry.
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? I am a dog owner. I have 2 rescue dogs that are nondescript breeds who are neutered, and I have 1 dog I bought from a kennel, a collie, who's fully intact, and I have no intentions on breeding him. I did intend to show him, but that takes more time than I have, and he's not the brightest collie I've ever seen. And so I have always been and always loved dogs and always had dogs. And I think the intent of this is not to interfere with anybody's rights, but allow us to differentiate between good breeders who follow acceptable practices and allow us to get online. And if we have people advertising from Lewis County online with dogs and they don't have a permit and we don't know where they are or what they're doing, it gives us an opportunity to go out and verify that they're running a good organization. There's no health risk. We don't have to go down. I have a neighbor about a mile from my house who got to be very, very old and took less and less care of her dogs, recognized nationally as a judge and a breeder, and she had good stock. But when they went in and visited after multiple complaints by neighbors, it found out about 2/3 of her dogs had to be put down for infectious diseases. And that's a sad situation for a good person, but we have to have some way to monitor breeding situations where there's health risk. So I am in support of this. I appreciate the breeders coming out here, pointing out errors or mistakes or ways we could phrase it better. There is no conspiracy here. You did not come here trying to get rid of competitors. We asked you to get involved and make sure we were down the right path. So I appreciate and I thank you for your comments and your time and your patience. Are there any other comments?
I was going to make another comment. It's really nice to see a lot of people here. When we pass our $100 million budget, we sometimes have 2 to 4 people. So it's really good to see people here voicing their opinions and that we can take time to listen to all of you. And I also appreciate the time staff has done to put this in front of the audience and really have a good discussion. We don't make these rules lightly. We want to have everybody's opinion and do the best what is for the county. So once again, thank you very much.
I too, I will tell you right now, I am a dog lover, even though I have cats. And the reason that I have cats is because you can leave them for a period of time. The reason I don't have a dog is because I'm never home. And unless Edna and Bill would let me start bringing them to work every day, I just felt like I don't have one of those types of animals. So, and again, this first reared its ugly head, I think, when I first heard, I've been in a year and 4 months now, or almost 5. So one of the things that I was concerned about is when we have these puppy mills and we know that they're splashed out, You know, it is unfortunate that, you know, the legal people that are really taking a lot of time and doing what they need to do and follow the laws and, you know, and do it in a fashion that we know that most people do. We need to see more of those stories, that's for sure. But I particularly, when the judge, when the court system said that a lifetime ban on people that are illegally putting these puppy mills together was only 2 years, and again, we have no power over that, so that's not our deal. So I too, and then of course you start, when this process start, you think about rights of individuals, you know, the people that are harassing, and which is not, you know, that's not the way that we hope that society is, but we know it is. So we're going to work forward this, and I too is one that I don't want to put any more laws, any more ordinances on the book than we necessarily have to. I think government's too big, and we're very intrusive, probably most of the time. But unfortunately, in this situation, I think for the betterment, you know, the dogs can't talk, even though that I think they're very, very smart. Here, I think we need to step up and we need to make the right decision. But I am too concerned about all the things that we're all concerned about. And I can tell you I've got faith in our system in this county that we're going to do the right thing to continue to monitor this and make it a stronger county.
And with one more comment, when people say government's too large, while Ron Averill and I were in office, we downsized government almost 20% in Lewis County. Over 108 positions were downsized, and of those, about 7 have been hired back for one place or another. But we have downsized government. We balanced the budget. We've done those things that a conservative county is expected to do. But when you find a crack in the legal system and a crack in enforcement, you have to fix it. So I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ordinance is passed.
Seeing no further business, seeing no further business on our agenda, I move that we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.